We are a common voice for universities of applied sciences in Europe. We are a European networking platform in the field of applied research and innovation. We are showing Europe our sustainable impact. We are UAS4EUROPE. Today, we face growing global challenges on issues of health, climate change and food security. UAS tackled these and more global challenges on a local level by teaming up with different types of partners and acting as regional connectors. How we do it? Through our extensive UAS network that reaches across the European continent. Through more than 600 institutions, over 60,000 excellent researchers, and over 2 million motivated students. With partners spanning from startups to regional authorities, from SMEs to multinationals, and research and technology organizations. We design and implement our projects together. Our universities of applied sciences are important changemakers in their regions and cities. Join our UAS movement in Europe. Check out our website and become a partner. UAS4EUROPE. Let's tackle global challenges together.
A very warm welcome, everybody, to what is a lovely day here in Brussels, the heart of Europe. My name is Simon Pickard. I'm the Network Director at Science Business, Europe's leading media and communications organization focused on research and innovation policy in Europe. And it's my pleasure to be moderating this morning's session of the annual networking conference of UAS4EUROPE. So thank you all very much for taking the time to join us for what promises to be a very entertaining, enlightening, and important morning of debate and exchange around the central theme of today's conference, from breakthrough ideas to breakthrough innovation. So we'll be going into this with a range of keynote speakers and also an interactive panel discussion a little later this morning. But I think above all, it underlines the importance of how the universities of applied sciences in Europe can better connect, better integrate, and better contribute to Europe's strategic agenda as Horizon Europe, the next framework program for research and innovation, launches. Now, the significance of research and innovation to Europe has, of course, been already highlighted by the current Commission, not least as a critical driver of the green and digital transitions, our journey to climate neutrality by 2050, and its importance to Europe's industrial competitiveness at an international level. But of course, in the past year, its value and significance has been amplified by the COVID-19 crisis. And of course, the vaccine development journey is perhaps the quintessence of what research and innovation can contribute to society when it gets its act together, and is provided with the political and financial support to meet incredibly challenging ambitions and to tackle incredibly challenging problems. So, over the rest of today, we are going to focus on what universities of applied sciences can contribute to Europe's future, and in particular as a driver of the post-COVID recovery phase. So this morning, we're going to focus both on the big picture and latest developments in European policy for research and innovation. We'll have opening keynotes running through until about 10:35 to 10:40, followed by a high-level panel discussion at 11 o'clock. And then we will also be prioritizing networking, exchange, and going into more granular detail about engagement with Horizon Europe in the afternoon workshop sessions that will begin at around 1:25. Now, your contributions to today's event, it goes without saying we're very eager and keen for you to be involved and to be able to contribute your thoughts, your questions, and your perspectives. So we will be using Slido throughout the morning. In a few minutes' time, I will give you an opening question so that we can build up a little word cloud just to get everybody engaged with the tool. And then you will also be invited to post questions for MEP Niebler in the third slot in this morning's plenary session, and of course, during the panel debate to follow. If you're using social media and you want to post anything regarding the conference and what you're hearing, please use the hashtag or the tag, hashtag UAS4Europe in capital letters and that will make sure that it gets captured as a record of comments on today's event. Now, two other messages. The first is that you can also benefit from the virtual exhibition space, which is available through the conference platform at the top of your screen. And you can also continue to schedule face-to-face meetings on that platform up until 3:30 this afternoon, when the final matchmaking session will begin. Now, let's move to the formal agenda. And we're very pleased to welcome our first opening speaker, or we'll welcome our opening speakers presently. But first, we're going to hear a very brief introduction from Professor Christiane Fritzer, who's the current chair of UAS4EUROPE. Let's roll the tape.
Distinguished speakers, dear participants, my name is Christiane Fritzer and I'm the president of Coburg University of Applied Sciences, as well as the vice president of Hochschule Bayern. During the last year, I had the honor to chair UAS4EUROPE, an informal network which was founded in 2016 by 5 founding members and has since grown to 9 member organizations. Today, on our 5th anniversary, we represent the interests of more than 450 universities of applied sciences in 14 European countries. Universities of applied sciences forge close partnerships with regional industries, authorities, and citizens, and are thus key players in developing a green and innovative Europe. With a regional embeddedness, UAS need to be more recognized on the European and international stage. This is the core of UAS4EUROPE's mission. Through the publication of position papers and statements, as well as through the organization of networking events, UAS4EUROPE strengthens the voice of universities of applied sciences in Europe. We provide a networking platform for knowledge exchange and reach out to European institutions and other stakeholders. Thanks to our increasing visibility and growing influence on EU decision-making processes, we are currently transforming UAS4EUROPE into a legal entity to achieve the status of a formal non-profit organization with its own secretariat. I'm very happy that you accepted the invitation to our 3rd UAS4EUROPE networking conference to discuss the important role of universities of applied sciences in turning breakthrough ideas into breakthrough innovations. With a pleasing high number of registered participants, this networking conference is not only the largest event we ever hosted, but also assembles an impressive variety of participants and the audience, with countless researchers, EU referents, scientific officers, UAS presidents and rectors, EU officials, industry and SME representatives, and students from all over Europe and beyond. As chairwoman of UAS4EUROPE, I wish you fruitful discussions and informative exchanges. Enjoy the conference.
Thank you very much, Professor Fritzer. A great way to set the context for today's discussions. Now, in the interest of time, we are going to move straight into the plenary program, and we're going to hear first from Bernd Siebler, the Minister for Culture and the Arts in the state of Bavaria, who unfortunately cannot be with us in person today, but has kindly taken the time to pre-record some reflections on how we can best translate breakthrough ideas into breakthrough innovation and the role of universities of applied sciences. I now give the floor to Minister Siebler.
Dear Commissioner Gabriel, dear members of the European Parliament, in particular, dear Ms. Niebler, dear Angela, dear presidents of the 9 members of the UAS4EUROPE, in particular, dear Ms. President Professor Fritze. As current chair of UAS4EUROPE and vice chair of Hochschule Bayern, dear Mr. Reichel and dear Ms. Lukas-Eder, and last but not least, dear representatives of our European universities of applied sciences, ladies and gentlemen. Universities of applied sciences in Europe, both are political matters close to my heart. For this reason, I'm very honored to be able to take part in this conference again and warmly welcome you to it. I'm already taking part for the 4th time. How time flies. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we cannot meet in person today, but I'm glad that we have the possibility to meet virtually. In this way, we can discuss how to intensify the participation of our universities of applied sciences in European research funding. With its motto, Universities of Applied Sciences from breakthrough ideas to breakthrough innovation, this virtual conference addresses this task perfectly. I'd like to thank you all for your combined efforts to make this conference possible. Please allow me, as Bavarian State Minister of Science and the Arts, to point out the current chair of UAS4EUROPE and therefore the chair of this conference, Professor Christiane Fritzer. Hochschule Bayern, the Bavarian Association of UAS4EUROPE, is currently holding the presidency of UAS4EUROPE. Therefore, I'd like to thank all the members of Hochschule Bayern in Bavaria as well as in Europe. In this context, I would also like to highlight the work of the Bavarian Research Alliance, in particular its Brussels team. A big thank you to Ms. Lukaseder and Mr. Reichel and their colleagues. Without you, this conference would not be possible. You are indeed a VIP for our Universities of Applied Sciences, a very important partner. Especially in a European context. We should take this European teamwork that we can see here today as a role model. I cannot stress it enough. We need a strong, democratic and united Europe. It is the only way to find long-lasting solutions, together and across borders. COVID-19 has brought home the urgency of these policies. Therefore, I'm very happy that the EU has agreed on the 9th EU key funding program Horizon Europe with a budget of 95.5 billion euros. That is indeed a strong commitment and shows how highly Europe values research and innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, this conference is right on time. We are now moving into a new chapter of European research policy, and not only because of the new funding period of Horizon Europe. As you all know, last autumn, the European Commission published its communication on a new European research area and started an intensive discussion between the member states and the stakeholders. I eagerly welcome this initiative as it will strengthen the European research area while making it visible not only for the professional sphere but also for a greater public. This is critical. Universities, and that certainly includes Universities of Applied Sciences, must be seen as the main players in the fields of research, education and innovation. They are the cornerstone of our European science system. This is true for its quality as well as for the number of involved partners. They do not only power research and generate new scientific findings, they are true places of knowledge transfer, in particular by educating the younger generation. As Bavarian State Minister of Science, I also want to stress the importance of the European regions in this context. And in Germany, these are the federal states. They are key political players for science and research. Therefore, it is clear that we cannot develop the European research area without giving the voices of the regions a central role in the further process. We need to work together. Ladies and gentlemen, now we can take the next steps to intensify the participation of our Universities of Applied Sciences in European research funding. Our Universities of Applied Sciences are already highly innovative. They bridge the gap between developing new ideas and actually realizing them. They achieve excellent research results, and they are typically closely connected to innovative local companies and startups. Here in Bavaria, we have been convinced of their innovative strength for a long time. This is why Bavarian Prime Minister Dr. Markus Söder has made a clear political commitment to science, technology and innovation with our Bavarian high-tech agenda. This has been the most impressive program of a federal government of Bavaria in the last 20 years. It helps us shape digital transformation, strengthen our applied research, and develop it further. With this program, we are spending 3.5 billion euros for science and economy, and consequently for our future. This massive investment into our key technologies is unique among the federal states of Germany. In this way, we are supporting our universities' groundbreaking developments, for example in the fields of AI, computer science, energy and climate research, or lasting infrastructure. We are also giving our professors at our universities of applied sciences more freedom they can use for more applied research and development, for more efficient technology transfer, and for more spin-off activities. We're doing all this because we are convinced that a leading role of the Bavarian research environment can also boost the European research cooperation. Therefore, we have also developed new and ambitious legislation for our universities, for a modern and forward-looking university policy, and for additional responsibility for our universities. Last autumn, under the burden of the growing challenges of the pandemic, we took another big step into the right direction. Now, our universities can fill 1,800 positions in research and teaching much faster. And we want to offer them the best possible infrastructure and conditions here in Bavaria in order to take a quantum leap forward in technology and innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, we can only do this with the help of the universities of applied sciences. They are a real success, and not only here in Bavaria. They are close to our economy and our society. And over the last decade, they have developed at the speed of light, regionally, nationally, and internationally. With their unique profile, they have become a worldwide export hit. They truly stand for up-to-date applied research and development. We have to emphasize, connect, and show their strength to our own benefit. With that in mind, I'm sure we're going to have a successful and enlightening conference. And I'm looking forward to it as much as I'm sure you are. Let's now enjoy this virtual conference.
Thank you very much to Minister Sibler for taking the time to record these important messages for us. And I think it's a salutary reminder, not only of the contribution that universities of applied sciences can make to Europe's enormously ambitious agenda in research and innovation, but for the importance of the inclusion of regional agencies and alignment with regional policies so that we have a fully connected, highly impactful European research area by 2025. Now, we will hear a little bit more about that in just a few seconds from our next keynote speaker, but before I welcome her, let me announce our first Slido questions so that you can get involved in the virtual input for today's event. And so you'll see the Slido link in your screens, and there is a single question for you to answer. And we'll follow this over the course of the morning to see what you come up with. And the question is the following: what word do you most associate with universities of applied science? So please feel free to enter that over the next few minutes, even the next couple of hours, and we will revisit this to see what your analysis is. But now let's move on with the program, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Maria Gabriel, the European Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education and Youth. A huge portfolio with huge ambitions. Commissioner, you set us on the path for a very dynamic and exciting next 5 years. So we're delighted to have you with us, and we would also very much welcome your thoughts on how we can better translate breakthrough ideas into breakthrough innovation and how universities of applied science might contribute to that agenda. Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear Minister, dear community of universities of applied science, dear researchers and innovators, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, allow me to start by warmly thanking Professor Fritz and Dr. Nibler for inviting me to this event. Dear Angelica, as one of the most active and most efficient members of the European Parliament, it's a great pleasure to work together with you on all these important for our present and our future issues. And yes, I particularly like the challenging, the theme you choose, the path from ideas to innovation. Because yes, on one side, it is at the heart of my portfolio and it is one of my main priorities. But to start immediately, we need both. We need the discovery aspect of looking for breakthrough ideas, processes, and technologies, and we absolutely need to make them at the service of our society and economy. And this is critical these days when we are looking to kickstart our post-pandemic recovery based on our green and digital transition. And this discussion is very timely in the current context we are in. The launch of Horizon Europe and Erasmus Plus programs, the finalization of the recovery plan by member states, the renewal of the European research area, and the preparations towards the European innovation area. And in this context, universities of applied sciences have a very key role to play. We would like to achieve a sustainable recovery. But to achieve a sustainable recovery, we need to focus on a limited number of key priorities. Green, digital, and health are some of them. And we need to preserve Europe's excellent science, but also to turn this into leadership in innovation. It will be key to create synergies between our policies with national policies and recovery plans and with the regional levels. I would be happy to hear from you what you believe should be Europe's key priorities and how we can do more and what we can do more to maximize synergies. Because yes, we have very good instruments at hand to help achieve these ambitions. First, we have Horizon Europe with a reinforced budget of 95.5 billion euros, the biggest European R&I program ever made. Universities of applied science already play a key role under Horizon 2020, and I count on your expertise to make Horizon Europe a success. Two key novelties where I would like to see your participation: missions and European Innovation Council. First, missions. Missions have specific and ambitious objectives with a clear time limit and are designed to meet the aspirations of Europeans for a greener, healthier world. They can only be accomplished if we mobilize the energies of research and innovation, but also beyond at European, national, and local levels. And here I count on your active contribution as local and regional actors, as well as key ecosystem players. With the European Innovation Council, we count on a new instrument to bring breakthrough innovation into the market with the help of your research and technological capacity provided to startups and SMEs. And this instrument will be key to transform applied science into concrete market solutions. Universities of applied sciences ensure close links with industry and citizens. Therefore, you have an enormous potential to translate breakthrough ideas into breakthrough innovation. And I encourage more universities of applied sciences to participate also in the European Institute for Innovation and Technology. As you know, we have reinforced its budget to almost 3 billion euros to boost ecosystem creation, connecting education, research, and private sector. In particular, I would like to bring to your attention the new EIT action proposed for 21-27 on increasing the innovation capacity of higher education institutions. This initiative will provide higher education institutions with the right tools to support innovation across their campuses and beyond. The pilot call has already been launched and will result in selection of 23 pilot projects that will be implemented over 24 months from July. Activities can focus on several themes, including fostering institutional engagement and change, strengthening partnerships between higher education, business, and research organizations, developing innovation and business support services, or enhancing the quality of entrepreneurial education. Secondly, we have Erasmus Plus program. Encouraging entrepreneurship and bridging the education and business sector spheres will be one of the main tasks of the new Erasmus Plus program, with a reinforced budget of 26 billion euros. Erasmus Plus will fund, for example, the European Universities Alliances. You are already part of these initiatives, and I thank you for your support. These partnerships are about creating a favorable European environment for strong transnational cooperation in education and research, to go from breakthrough ideas to breakthrough innovation. The 18 universities of applied sciences that are partners in the 41 European Universities Alliances, selected in 2019 and 2020, demonstrate that diversity adds complementary strength to the transformation that is underway. We need to be a bit dreamers and look for new ideas, but it is important that some of the dreams are done with our eyes open to turn them into concrete results with impact for our citizens and economy. And universities of applied sciences offer more project-oriented curricula. You foster a culture of efficient knowledge and technology transfer that I would like to see communicated through the European universities and shared with the wider higher education sector. We have another important instrument at our disposal. Boosting knowledge transfer is one of the main priorities of the new European research area. And here I would like to thank you for the contribution you have made already with your position paper on our ERA communication. Our work on the recently established ERA Forum for Transition is progressing well. We are aiming to adopt a proposal for a pact for research and innovation as a council recommendation. And the aim of the pact for research and innovation in Europe is to assemble in one act the ERA's values, principles, and priorities in order to promote their consistent implementation throughout the member states. We have based our efforts on our common values and principles developed throughout the past 20 years on areas such as freedom of scientific research, the pursuit of excellence and socioeconomic valorization, gender equality, open access, or career conditions for researchers. Similarly, the European Union and member states have identified and supported common European research area priorities, such as the mobility of researchers, large-scale research infrastructures, or public-public and public-private partnerships, and this will continue notably through Horizon Europe. Now, to conclude, let me say a few words on my vision for developing a European innovation area, a European innovation ecosystem. It should be an enabler of the new transformative innovation policy and respond to the need for a more holistic policy approach to innovation, to build more interconnected ecosystems. Because yes, we are witnessing challenges such as climate change and digital transformation, but also ongoing changes in the dynamics of innovation. The innovation dynamics in the digital age have new features. For example, multiple technologies and disciplines are coming together to enable a deep tech wave that is accelerating the speed of innovation. We have also observed that there are new innovation sources that are not necessarily research-based. We need to adapt to these challenges, with encouraging synergies between our policies and funds. Hence, rethinking our innovation strategy means bringing in these new elements and aiming for change with regard to all debates. We need to accelerate the transformation of our educational institutions. We need a truly interconnected innovation ecosystem, foster applied sciences industry cooperation, focus on new European champions, and support infrastructures for testing and experimenting solutions. And here the contribution of universities of applied sciences will be essential. And I would like to thank you again for your letter of support on the European innovation area. So now I will stop here. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity that you gave to me to share some thoughts with you. And allow me to say that the doors of my office are always open to you. Don't hesitate, because I fully believe that only when we work together, when we join forces, we are able to achieve better results. And this time, the results is for every one of us. It's for the European leadership. Thank you very much.
Commissioner, thank you so much for those inspiring words and for the time that you've taken with us this morning. I can see Dr. Niebler applauding in the background, so you must have done something right if the Parliament's happy at the same time. So we will be continuing these discussions over the course of the morning. You've given us some great ideas and some framing context and a real clarion call to action for universities of applied sciences to be a driver of your agenda over the next 4 to 5 years. So thank you again for joining us. And we will indeed hope to visit you one day, not too far in the distant future, and perhaps welcome you in person to the UAS4EUROPE conference next year. So we wish you much success in your endeavours and thank you again for your time. And so with that, I'm delighted to introduce our third keynote speaker of the morning, Dr. Angelika Niebler, a member of the European Parliament and putting you very much amongst friends and colleagues this morning, Dr. Niebler, also a visiting lecturer in IPR at the Munich University of Applied Sciences. So we're delighted to have you with us to also share your real-world perspectives as well as your political perspectives on this question of how universities of applied sciences can help Europe drive its green and innovative agenda, and of course this broader question of regional development and how they can be key actors within that context as well. So Dr. Niebler, allow me to give you the floor for your opening remarks. And before you begin, a quick reminder that if participants have any questions that they would like to ask Dr. Niebler after opening remarks, please enter them in Slido and we'll do our best to come to them. So Dr. Niebler, the floor is yours.
Mr. Picard, thank you so much. And well, dear Commissioner, dear Maria Gabriel, dear President Brunner, dear ladies and gentlemen, representatives from the Universities of Applied Sciences, dear researchers, dear Mr. Reichel, dear Mrs. Lucas Eder, I'm really happy and delighted to join this networking conference this morning. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to be with you. In particular, as I really like the subject you have chosen to talk about today, being innovation and the universities. And let me start maybe by stressing well, that for any societal challenge we are facing right now, and Commissioner Gabriel mentions the most important one right now, climate change and the digital transformation, but also questions on aging society, on how to protect the environment, etc. For all that, we need innovation. We need innovation, innovation, innovation. And for that, I think the universities of applied sciences really play the most important role. Let's look at the COVID-19 pandemic, for instance. You know, Mrs. Gabriel, Commissioner, had, I think, had close contacts also with BioNTech, and CureVac, you know, all our former startup companies who worked on developing a vaccine. And without the help of the European Union, and in particular Commissioner Gabriel, it would not have been a breakthrough. And if I talk about BioNTech, for instance, you know, one person who actually was in charge of also taking care of speeding up the production of the vaccine, which is now distributed all over the world. One person which is helping that this production and distribution really worked well was someone, the chairman of the supervisory board, was coming from the business administration at the University of Applied Sciences of Neu-Ulm. This is just an example to show you how important it is. Breakthrough innovations and close cooperation with people, you know, really knowing how you bring breakthrough innovations to the market. And that is what the universities of applied sciences do. And I think that is, you know, why they play such a crucial role all over Europe. So for me, there are three reasons why I think the universities of applied sciences are central to our innovative future of Europe. Firstly, the universities of applied sciences make things happen. Innovation is a tedious process of trial and error. One idea builds upon the next one. It is this process of thinking and doing which leads to tangible results. There would be no iPhone, there would be no satellites, no vaccine without this close interaction between theory and practice. And it is key to innovation, and we need more of that in Europe. Universities of applied sciences are unique environments where young people are not only educated, but also empowered to put their education into practice. removing the barrier between academia and business, I think, is a precondition for a more innovative Europe. Universities of applied sciences bring research results into the market. And if you allow me just to mention one figure, I had a look at what we call Gründerradar, the startup radar 2021 from Germany. Among the top universities producing startups, the second in place out of nearly 60 universities are the Universities of Applied Sciences of Munich. So you see UAS are really playing an important role in that. Secondly, I think universities of applied sciences prepare our workforce for the future. This is also key. We can innovation and breakthrough technologies, breakthrough innovations. You need skilled people, very skilled people, and that is what universities of applied sciences do. We always tend to forget that innovation cannot be mandated by politicians or created out of thin air. It's skilled people with ideas, with experience, but also with the courage to make those ideas happen, to become reality, to drive innovation. And for that, well, let's move on. Especially STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics skills, I think are right now crucial and critical to drive the twin transitions in Europe. That was mentioned by Commissioner Gabriel as well. So maybe that is one remark I'd like to make. Maybe we should also even more, encourage our young people to graduate from STEM tertiary education. I learned that only 1 out of 5 young people in Europe are really coming from STEM education, and maybe we should even more make these fields attractive by offering hands-on approaches and stepping stones into a STEM career. Thirdly, universities of applied sciences are vital for a strong Europe rooted in strong regions, and that Mr. Picard was mentioned by you. It's not only skilled people coming from the universities of applied sciences. It's not their close interlinking to market, but in particular what they do, the universities of applied sciences for developing all our regions. It's amazing, honestly, it's amazing. So if I look, for instance, in my region, Bavaria, 13 million people, we have 17 state-funded universities of applied sciences and 8 privately funded UAS. And those universities are really important partners, in particular for our small and medium-sized companies. The backbone of our industrial basis in the European Union lies on small and business-sized companies, and having this close link between the UAS and our SME businesses all over Europe, I think this is key really for being innovative in the European Union. If we want to have strong regions, then we have to really encourage, a close cooperation between SMEs and our UAS. I think that is key for the development of the regions, and that's important. Europe is not only about the big cities. Europe is about having a lot of regional hubs everywhere, where then you have a universities of applied science, you have an SMEs, you have other it's right a hub, and it's going to be a good development of the whole region. And that's what I learned in Bavaria, in regions where there had been no business, where there only had been some sort of agriculture, they really developed and became prosperous due to the innovative approach taken by the UAS. What's needed? Let's turn to European politics. I think Commissioner Gabriel already addressed a lot of issues and instruments which had been developed also with regard to Horizon Europe, where we try to help also and we try to support also our universities of applied sciences all over Europe. I think politically what we should do even more is to spread the idea of universities of applied sciences all over Europe. The more universities of applied sciences we have, the more the innovation ecosystem of Europe will benefit in general. Secondly, I think we need to see universities of applied sciences as close partners in terms of our research agenda. They need to be included more closely in Horizon Europe and other research policies. And I'm not only talking now about funding. Of course, funding is key and funding is important. And without money, it's actually difficult to be the motor for innovations. But also, I think in the governance structure of all our institutions, of all our agencies, I think UAS representatives have to be much more taking part into that and be nominated. Thirdly, we also need to include the concept of universities of applied sciences in our European skills agenda. The universities are natural partners of the transformation we need for our European workforce, and we should form strong partnerships in this relation. That, ladies and gentlemen, brings me to my last point. What should we expect of UAS4EUROPE? Well, I think UAS4EUROPE is the platform where politics, industry, and universities of applied sciences representatives are meeting. UAS4EUROPE needs to be the link between Horizon Europe, the policymakers, businesses, and universities, the link between European skills, the European skills agenda, and the regional hubs of innovation consisting of SMEs and universities of applied sciences. This is actually why I'm really delighted to be here with you today. And I'm now finishing by maybe repeating what Commissioner Gabriel just stressed at the very end of her intervention. She said that as regards the European Commission, the doors are always open for representatives from the UAS, and I'd like also to support, to join me in that. Also, the European Parliament and a lot of my colleagues I know are very keen in supporting UAS. And please come and let us know how we can help, how we can support your endeavors in bringing forward innovation, in encouraging young people in moving forward and really helping us to create at the end of the day a better world. So thank you so much for allowing me to talk to you. I wish you a good conference, and I'm really happy if there are any questions coming up to answer. So thanks again. I'm now giving back to Simon Pickard and wish you all really good discussions and a lot of contacts and a lot of exchange of views. Thank you so much.
Dr. Niebler, thank you so much, and very heartwarming comments as well. I mean, you clearly speak with the passion of somebody who's had a close working relationship with UASs over the years and would love to see that amplified at a European level. And I think that very much is a red thread that runs throughout all of our discussions today. So a quick reminder to people watching online, wherever you may be, you can use the live Q&A function if you have any questions for Dr. Niebler. I do have a couple. While we give that window of opportunity to our audience to contribute their own. So Dr. Niebler, we've talked about the importance of giving more access, of really trying to promote greater engagement for universities of applied sciences in Horizon Europe. You mentioned something very important, which is the governance, not just mobilizing to try and secure more money. Do you have any practical ideas or recommendations or tips for what Commissioner Gabriel and her colleagues could do to build this into the terms, the conditions, the boundaries, and as you say, the governance of Horizon Europe as the work programs begin to launch in the next few weeks and months?
Well, actually, yes, thank you very much for that question. I think, what is obvious is, for instance, that UAS is much more engaged in institutions like the EIT. So that's the research area. But what I was thinking of when talking about the governance structures, we are building up quite a lot of supervisory councils also when it comes to digital transformation, when it comes to implementing the Green Deal. So right now, for instance, I'm working on the Data Governance Act. We are trying to establish a sort of data governance structure in Europe so that, Europe can play a much more vital role in the data economy. We want to build up data spaces all over Europe. So where universities, where academia, where business, where the policymakers, are sharing information, are sharing content, are sharing data. This is not so well. We are lagging behind if we compare it with China or with the United States. That's what we want to do, and for doing that, we are establishing a lot of supervisory council, and I would be happy, if not only SMEs and are taking part, and stakeholders are taking part in that advisory council, but if also, representatives from UAS are participating. And the same is true with regard to building up the green economy. So we talk about hydrogen. So we talk about, renewable energy. We talk about all different instruments of transforming and allowing to move to a carbon neutral society. So for that, we need input from UIS, how we can do that, because I'm absolutely persuaded that if we want to go for climate neutrality, we politicians should not do it by, saying this needs to be done and that needs to be done. Innovation comes from the universities of applied sciences, from SMEs, from the big companies, from all working together, and we need that input. And for that, this is my plea to you: not only look at Horizon Europe and the research programs and what's offered there, but if you talk about governance structure, let's look what's happening when implementing the Green Deal. When passing legislation also on the digital agenda, because I'm sure that input is needed also from the US side.
Terrific, thank you very much for those perspectives. Now we have a sort of a related question from a member of the audience, because you obviously mentioned sort of beyond Horizon. The question is about SMEs, and I think it's sort of broadly recognized that the COVID crisis in particular has led to a decrease in R&D and innovation investment from big companies, but also for smaller companies as well, as revenues have fallen. So given the very clearly demonstrated track record of success that UASs have in strengthening SMEs through knowledge and technology transfer, but also through other kinds of partnership, what more can be done at European level to close this gap between the struggles on R&D and investment, innovation spending for SMEs, and what UASs can provide to them?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I think funding is key. And when we decided on the Next Generation EU program, it was important that we also clearly stressed and earmarked also that money is going to be given to SMEs. So I think this is vital, that not only the big ones, the big airlines or whatever, are supported by the money being available now on the European Union level, but that in particular, we try to strengthen our SME community all over Europe. So I think that is a very important point to mention at the very beginning. And apart from that, what I learned from my SME community with which I have close contact, they always ask for cutting red tape. Not come forward with new bureaucratic obligations for the small and medium-sized companies, but let us do our business. That is what they always communicated, and I think that we have to take into account. And thirdly, what's important actually is that also within the European Commission, there is a contacting point is going to be established where SMEs can address their wishes or their concerns. That is what we in Parliament have asked for the Commission for a long time. Let's establish a SME officer in the European Commission high ranking, so that SMEs in particular have a contacting point to whom they can address their concerns, their wishes, whatever they want to communicate to the European Commission. And what I learned is, because Parliament made a lot of pressure in that respect, the one who is taking over, that responsibility is going to be nominated now in due course. That's also what I think is necessary.
Excellent. So let's stay on one of the topics you mentioned in your opening remarks, which is digital transition. And another question from an audience member is, how do you envisage that European citizens can be or become more digitally enabled? And of course, the related question is, what role do you think universities of applied sciences have in meeting that particular need as we go further into the post-COVID recovery and economic revitalization?
Well, this is a very difficult question, and I think it's not easy to answer in one sentence. I think it's perfectly right. Well, the universities of applied sciences should examine as to whether they have some ideas on setting up programs, which can also help, in particular, beginning in grammar school, in teaching our pupils to better cope, with the challenges of the digital world right now. So, and apart from that, I think in every UAS, well, you have to use all media, social media, digital things, digital skills should have, I think, the same relevance than learning, reading, and writing, actually. So that's what the future is actually about. So the younger ones maybe are more familiar with all the techniques, but I think universities of applied studies should also concentrate in finding out how they can help that SMEs are better coping, with the digital world. What I learned as politician, for instance, and that is a job I have to do, according to recent surveys, it's shown that SMEs are so reluctant in sharing data because they are not so much familiar with the GDPR rules. So they fear if they are sharing data, then maybe, they are going to infringe data protection rules, and that's not what they want. So they are reluctant in participating in this data sharing community. So I think, we have to take care on the political level what can be changed in order to facilitate also for SMEs participating in the digital world. And I think universities, it's not up to me to define. We're looking at the brilliant people, studying at the university. Look at the excellent professors which we have at the universities of applied sciences all over. They have brilliant ideas with which they should come up. And please use the money, the funding. Please use the contacts you have. Engage in all political discussions we have all over. We are right now talking about what governance structure we need for AI solutions. I attended a conference last night organized by Stanford University. So what kind of governance structure we need, so that data generated by AI, are biased, for instance, taking care of the broad diversity of society we have. Again, it's not easy. It's not a simple question to be easily answered, but there are a lot of new questions coming up, and I would be more than happy and delighted if also UAE are participating in that broad societal dialogue.
Wonderful. Now, I have one final question, if I may, which sort of comes from a member of the audience, but it also ties into our Slido question about what people associate with universities of applied sciences, and the panel discussion to follow around the Horizon Europe implementation. And it's the following, right? The number 2 choice on the poll, what do you most strongly associate with UAS? It's applied research. And in the build-up to this event, we've talked a lot about practice-based research as well. And the question from our audience member is that this has not historically been recognized by the framework programs, that the evaluation of practice-based research is somehow limited because of publications and the more traditional academic criteria. So do you have any thoughts on how this could be better recognized, the boundary conditions of what universities of applied sciences do in applied research, how that might be better recognized in Horizon Europe going forward?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. I think it's important, and I fully agree with the assessment being made that in the older Horizon programs, Horizon 2020, for instance, I think universities of applied sciences have not been properly reflected in what they are doing for really an innovative Europe as a whole. But I think now with Horizon Europe, the scene has changed actually. And if you look at it, it's not only breakthrough technologies, it's not only excellency, which is going to be fostered, but the innovation part plays a crucial role right now. So the third pillar is about innovation, where a lot of money is also vested in it. So I think there had been also due to the engagement of University of Applied Sciences and UAS4EUROPE that now it's much more, Commission is much more familiar with the role UAS are playing, as you've learned from Mrs. Gabriel right now, and the same is true for the European Parliament. So I think we realized that it's not enough, just to have good ideas, brilliant ideas, but if you do not bring it to the market, if you are not exploiting your brilliant ideas, then others will do it. Then value added will be everywhere in the world, but not in the European Union. Yeah? And for that, I think this is the crucial role UAS are going to play. Let's transform it. It's a sort of interpretation. Let's bring innovation to the market and have value added and jobs for our European people here in Europe. I think that's what it's all about. And we will see, now coming out of the pandemic, this is our biggest concern in the European Union right now. How do we arrange for the restart of our economy? Yeah? And again, I think when you look at tourism laying down, so of course we have to start building all that up again, but it can't be made in particular in combination with the twin transition which we are dealing with right now. We need the UIS, we need all these talented, bright young people who have the idea and who have the skills, to make a business model out of it. That's it. And I'm repeating myself, but I'm really delighted that the UIS are so brilliantly positioned all over Europe, and whatever can be done to support, we should do it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Niebler. And as my mother likes to say, there's no problem in repeating something if you have something worthwhile to say, and you most certainly have this morning. So a very warm and sincere thank you for taking the time and for sharing your experiences and your insights with us. Thanks also to Commissioner Gabriel and to Minister Siebler. A very quick reminder to those of you watching at home that you can go onto the virtual exhibition space and continue to set up face-to-face meetings through to later this afternoon. And we will reconvene at 11 o'clock for the panel discussion about how universities of applied sciences can become a key driver of a green and innovative Europe at a regional level. So thank you very much for your time so far. Please remain logged onto the room, and we will see you again at 11 o'clock. Thank you very much, and goodbye for now.
We are a common voice for universities of applied sciences in Europe. We are a European networking platform in the field of applied research and innovation. We are showing Europe our sustainable impact. We are UAS4EUROPE. Today, we face growing global challenges on issues of health, climate change and food security. UAS tackled these and more global challenges on a local level by teaming up with different types of partners and acting as regional connectors. How we do it? Through our extensive UAS network that reaches across the European continent. Through more than 600 institutions, over 60,000 excellent researchers, and over 2 million motivated students. With partners spanning from startups to regional authorities, from SMEs to multinationals, and research and technology organisations. We design and implement our projects together. Our universities of applied sciences are important changemakers in their regions and cities. Join our UAS movement in Europe. Check out our website and become a partner. UAS4EUROPE. Let's tackle global challenges together.
Greetings once again, everybody, and welcome back for our second session in the UAS4EUROPE Annual Networking Conference. A warm welcome also to our viewers outside of Europe. I understand that based on a level of interest from Israeli universities of applied sciences, we have a number of people watching from the other side of the Mediterranean today, and given current circumstances, we hope that this finds you safe and well. So what will we be discussing in the next 90 minutes? Well, it's a broad topic, but fortunately we have plenty of time to explore various dimensions of it. We will be talking about universities of applied sciences as a key player in using regional power for a green and innovative Europe. And to support our debates and exchanges of insights and opinion, I'm delighted to welcome 5 eminent guests from across the research and innovation spectrum to join me on our virtual stage. First and foremost, Claudia Gamon, who's a member of the European Parliament and also of the Industry, Trade, Research and Energy Committee. A very warm welcome to you, Claudia. Second, we have Signe Ratzo, who is the Deputy Director General and Chief Negotiator for Association to Horizon Europe at DG Research and Innovation at the European Commission. Third, Krista Taipale, who is the Project Director for International Affairs in the Regional Council of Homa in Finland. My apologies, Krista, if my Finnish pronunciation is less than perfect. Fourth, we have Marjolein Broussard, who is the current president of UAS4EUROPE and also the president of ArtHes, University for Applied Sciences in the Netherlands. And last but by no means least, Pascal Brunner, who is the founder and chief executive officer of Batarax, a very dynamic SME in Switzerland, about which we will hear more a little later. So the purpose of today's discussion is to explore different aspects of how UAS can be more involved in Horizon Europe, how synergies can be better established between research and innovation and regional development, how SMEs and enterprise can be better connected into the universities of applied sciences across Europe, and more besides. We will take the first half an hour or so to give each of our panelists some time to lay down some opening remarks, some places for the broader discussion, and then we will devote basically the last hour of the panel to taking your questions and facilitating a more engaged discussion of some of these issues. So once again, if you have any questions for the panel as a whole or for individual panelists, please use the live Q&A function on Slido to table them, and we will come to as many of them as possible in the second part of the session. But let's get on with the content, and we will start with Claudia Gamon from the European Parliament, joining us from Austria, I believe, today. So Claudia, let's come to your perspectives on UAS seen through an Austrian lens, because of course Austria is one of the few, relatively few European member states which has really embedded universities of applied sciences in national policy, strategy, and programs. And so I guess the opening question is what you see as some of the key success factors that Austria has had in achieving this in recent years. And by extension, for those perhaps less familiar with how the Austrian system works, how does it work for universities of applied science within the national ecosystem?
Well, thank you, Simon, for these questions. Thank you all for having me on this panel. The UAS sphere is very dear to my heart because I also spent a couple of years in the Austrian Parliament working as my party's speaker for university policies and science policies. And it's quite funny to look at this question from an Austrian perspective, how it works in different European countries, because the UAS sector is very established in Austria. It makes up, it's very important to the entire tertiary education system as a whole. And I prepared a couple of basic facts to explain how it really works in Austria and how the system has managed to become so successful, even though we still have a long way to go, if you ask me, to really tackle, get to the full potential of what universities of applied sciences can bring to the table. The first UAS degree programs were established in 1994 already, so it's been quite a long time for them to really grow into what they have become now. And this really was an important step to move away also from the national state's monopoly in the sector of tertiary education. There are a couple of laws that govern everything in concerning the UAS's development. There is a law that determines how they can conduct teaching and research. That is a law that guarantees the quality assurance through the Agency for Quality Assurance and Accreditation in Austria. And I think that the history of the entire applied sciences sector here has really been one of very consistent growth, actually. There are 21 UASs in Austria. There is at least one in every state, even the small states like myself in Vorarlberg. We have one that is hugely successful, and they offer study programs across the board on very different sectors. Engineering, IT, business, tourism, natural sciences, social sciences, health studies. There is pretty much everything. And the students there make up about 15% of the total number of students in the Austrian tertiary education system, which I think is already a very significant number. And they have become very successful because they have a very different offer than traditional universities in Austria, because they have a different approach to teaching, they have a different approach to research, and they are very much closer to practitioners, to stakeholders, to decision makers. And they are very often also much more closely knitted with a local community, especially if they are situated in more rural areas even, and offer chances for tertiary education for people that maybe wouldn't have considered it otherwise. And that's also give them a very important place also in the social structure of Austria as well. I'm very sure of that. However, there is still a very huge obstacle to their to getting to their full potential, I believe, and that is the lack of sustainable and strategic central funding from the federal government. And that is especially true for the research sector of applied research at these universities. And the research funding isn't stable, and I think this is really hindering development in research, in applied research there. And I think that's actually a really tragic fact. And obviously, there is always debates in university policies about how to develop the sector further. And I have to be very open about my position here. Because sometimes, especially in the traditional academic field, people can be a little bit condescending talking about UASs. And I find that's also, again, very tragic. Obviously, there are quality differences in universities of applied sciences, just like there are quality differences in traditional universities. And I think that is just something that we have to be aware of. It really depends on local management, on how the different institutions work on themselves. And that is, I think we have to move away from that kind of aloof distinction between what a university can be and just look at it from the eyes of the 1970s. I think we can really move away from that and see the potential that lies in applied sciences and research, and what it can bring really as an added benefit to the students that really want to have that kind of education. And I think it should be their choice to make and see whoever brings the best offer to the table.
Thank you, Claudia. Those are very important opening remarks, and thank you for sort of setting the context of what's going on at Austrian level. I mean, one of the other related questions is that there seems to be perhaps a lower level of conventional wisdom around the value that universities of applied sciences create and how they diffuse that value, either in a national system or at more regional or local levels. So I wonder if through your experience in the Austrian Parliament and now your work in the European Parliament, you feel there are ways that that could be more clearly defined and articulated.
I think that UASs play an important role also as the bridge that is sometimes hard to explain between the value of education and creating new jobs in the workplace and what that actually brings to the economy. And they give politicians, but also companies, a very much clearer link and entry point to young students as the potential for the workforce. The unemployment rate of those students and graduates is really, really, really low. I think that is a very important key indicator of the success of the educational programs offered at UASs. And they are really important, and that is such a fascinating number to me, because they are very important because they offer education to, and that is fascinating because unlike in traditional universities, at UASs you do have to pay in Austria a fee to study there, a rather small fee, but that is an important distinction because traditional universities in Austria are free actually. However, it's fascinating that that there is a much larger percentage of students coming from more disadvantaged backgrounds actually going to UASs instead of universities in Austria, because they know that the education that they get there will be, is more or less, and let me put that bluntly, a much clearer guarantee for a safe job afterwards. It is a clear entry point to companies that work very closely with these institutions in terms of research and also in terms of the education offers that they get there. And that is a real benefit, I think, to society and to the economy in general. But it's important to say that we need both. We need the academia where people have the freedom to really talk about the big questions of life for years and years and have the possibility to get into basic research and spend their life there laying the groundwork for innovation, such as the innovation that led to the vaccines that we need now to get out of the pandemic. That is super important, and we should put a lot more investment in public funding into that. But applied research and the offers that are there at UASs are just as important. It's not one or the other. I think we need both to have a diverse education system that offers something for everybody, and that has and that really offers possibilities for those that are more disadvantaged in life, and that give them a chance of a real fair access to the education system for people that want to have their education and then they want to leave university and start a job that is just as valuable as those that want to stay in the university system. But for that, it's important to spend more on research, also on applied research at UASs. It's not worth less or more than any other research. It's just as important.
I think we would all agree with that. So I have one very short final question for you, also as a bridge into Signe Ratzo's comments that will follow. Do you have any practical recommendations for what the Commission could be doing to perhaps provide more structural support or to increase the access and levels of engagement for University of Applied Sciences in the big strategic agendas of the day?
Well, I'm not sure if that is necessarily something that the Commission can solve, because it's dependent on what member states actually want to achieve in their education systems. And I think the best case, the know-how is there. There are best case examples that you can look at. I think especially in Germany, in Austria, but also in Switzerland, these countries have had huge successes with building their tertiary education system like it is. And I think we're doing best in Europe if we just start copying other people's successes. There's really no shame in that. Copy everything that works. And I think this is a really good example that should be copied all over the board in Europe. And if anything, the Commission can facilitate that, and also can facilitate the way that UASs can also benefit from European research programs. I think that is very important, and be a facilitator in managing how can we expand the success that we've had in these German-speaking countries across the entire European Union.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, because it's really an ideal segue into opening remarks from Signe Ratzo on behalf of DG Research and Innovation. Signe, thanks again so much for taking the time to be with us this morning. Now, you've heard from Claudia that we should be doing more to amplify and to build on the successful models of universities of applied sciences, but this of course fits into a wider picture of European ambitions for modernization and transformation. So, based on what you've heard, how does this all align with the Commission's latest plans, the European strategy for universities?
Well, many thanks, Simon, for your kind introduction. I listened carefully to Claudia's comments, of course. Indeed, it's my great pleasure to join this networking conference of the Universities of Applied Sciences, which clearly have a very significant role in the higher education system, but also linking it with the economic sector. What I can say is that higher education sector is amongst the most dynamic sectors in society, and it is working at the intersection of the European research area and the European education area. So for the universities, certainly our Horizon Europe program on research and innovation is certainly open. So this is also one of the tools for the development of the universities. I'd like to highlight that there is currently a strong political push to exploit further synergies between education, research and innovation at the European level, namely leading the way towards joint education and research and innovation reforms, and also activities at national and institutional levels. So what is our vision is that universities of the future will need to be more interconnected, innovative, open, inclusive and digital, while moving towards a greener and sustainable future. We are currently having consultation process with stakeholder organizations, university alliances and member states, and we are currently identifying together the priorities, needs, but also impediments of higher education sector regarding transformation efforts towards the future. And certainly member states are very much part of that discussion. Now, the sectors call also for measures from the EU level that empower the universities in their own transformations, matched with the necessary framework that will facilitate cooperation between universities and with partners in their ecosystem, as well as with strong investment strategies. And this is what a European strategy for universities would entail, enabling, supporting and empowering of the sector.
Great, thank you, Signe. Well, let's go a little bit more into the details. I think historically, it's probably fair to say that universities of applied sciences haven't had anywhere near the levels of engagement or even benefit from previous framework programs as perhaps more conventional organizations and research-intensive universities. So what steps is the Commission taking more broadly to simplify engagement and hopefully to create more opportunities within Horizon Europe, whether that's also including missions and the innovations under Pillar 3, but just perhaps a helicopter view on how you see this framework program as a new opportunity landscape for universities of applied sciences?
Well, you mentioned simplification, and really simplification is the main guiding principle for the implementation strategy for Horizon Europe. Simplification facilitates the work of participants. It also attracts new applicants because really we need to make it more available for the newcomers, not only the participants, the traditional participants, but it also drives up the high quality of projects and results. Simplification also reduces the administrative costs for participation, and it lowers risks of financial errors. And this will especially benefit newcomers, as I said, but also smaller actors, whom we'd like to welcome more than previously into our program. In this, we can actually build upon the successful simplification under Horizon 2020, the previous program, and namely establishment of a single set of rules, a major reduction of time to grant, extended use of lump sums, flat rates, unit costs, fully electronic grant management. So these are also part of the wider implementation strategy. And in order to elaborate the strategy, we have consulted extensively our stakeholders, and since then we've developed the actual framework tools to run the calls to select and manage projects under Horizon Europe. By the way, we are also conducting an outreach campaign to inform participants on how the new program is working in practice. And the first two events focused on how to write a successful proposal for Horizon Europe. And these were followed live by up to 11,000 people. So you've really reached out widely.
Thank you very much for that. Now let's, obviously part of this morning's discussion is very much about regional context, and there's a long-standing relationship between DG Research and Innovation and DG Regio. So this ever elusive question of synergies, it's something we've been discussing in Brussels for it seems like an eternity. But under Horizon Europe and the new framework conditions that you're putting in place with the strategic plan for Horizon, where do you see the key areas of synergies developing between research and innovation and at the regional level? And what are some of the key tools that participants in today's conference should have in mind about how they could also contribute to that?
Well, where I'd like to start when discussing the synergies is first to highlight, as I mentioned earlier, the synergies between the European research area and European education area, but also with the new digital education action plan, because these will allow us to harness knowledge, making it the foundation of Europe's recovery and prosperity. And clearly, we need education research to work together in changing behavior for sustainable development. Now, we also have European Universities Pilot Initiative, which is an excellent example, namely of synergy between the education area and the research area. And the European University Alliances are then pioneering transformations in education, research, and innovation. And they are also acting as role models. Now, you mentioned also synergies with the regional development. And clearly, we are working very closely together with DG Regio, as our counterparts in cohesion and reforms. And we have been together developing successfully rules that really facilitate operational synergies between Horizon Europe on the one hand, and then cohesion policy programs on the other hand. Namely, we have mirroring provisions in all relevant forthcoming legislation: Horizon Europe, cohesion policy, state aid, general block exemption. What does it mean? It means that there will be more and simplified opportunities for cohesion policy authorities to implement research innovation investments in synergy with Horizon Europe, but also using alternative funding, for instance, seals of excellence, combined funding, that is co-funds, or cohesion policy funds as national contribution to Horizon Europe partnerships, for instance, but also cumulative funding, transfers of resources. So these are really the new opportunities in the toolbox, which enable to really achieve these synergies.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure we're going to come back to this question about how we can more effectively design programs and build networks and partnerships that meet these lofty ambitions. But it's a lovely segue into our next panelist, Krista Taipale in Finland, who is bringing a regional perspective. Krista, I mean, you've had plenty of time in Brussels working for Finnish regions. You're currently now with the Regional Council of HEMA. So within this broader question, our central theme for the session, what would you like to reflect on in opening remarks around the role of universities of applied sciences in the regional agenda and these green digital transitions that are at the heart of Europe's future?
Thank you very much, Simon, and good morning, all colleagues all over Europe and even further from Europe. My name is Krista Taipale, and I come indeed from the northern part of the EU, from Finland, and from the region of Häme. Just to help you to identify our region, it is located in the very heart of southern Finland, within 1 hour's drive from the major cities of Helsinki, Tampere, and Turku. As Simon mentioned, I represent the regional actor in this panel, and therefore I would like to focus mainly on 2 points. Firstly, the role of universities of applied sciences in regional development and innovation in general. And secondly, I would like to share some of my thoughts with you about how EU funding can and should support regional innovation ecosystems. First of all, it's clear for all of us that universities of applied sciences are very important actors what comes to the green growth and recovery and restart after COVID. USSs have also an important role in innovation processes all over Europe. In Finland, the universities of applied sciences have actually 3 tasks that are defined by the law. First, education; second, research and development; and third one, fostering regional development. And that's why universities of applied sciences are very important cooperation partners for us as a regional authority as well, already since long time. And this kind of partnership becomes even more important since innovation ecosystem especially have a growing role in the regions all over Europe. The region of Häme, where I come from, is at the moment preparing its new regional development program for the years 2022 until 2025. And this program is called the Green Growth Program of Häme. Our program is strongly based on ecosystemic thinking and also EU's Green Deal. It stresses the importance of regional, but also very much international cooperation and strong involvement of all key stakeholders, such as higher education institutions and universities of applied sciences, of course. Häme University of Applied Science, that is the University of Applied Science in our region, has participated in the planning of our new regional development program from the very beginning. And it is an important partner for us in many ways when we foster our regional strengths, such as smart bio and circular economy, biodiversity and robotics, and also in many other ways. And as we all know, globalization, technological and industrial transformation, and changing logic of value creation pose many new challenges for all of us. But at the same time, they provide also very interesting and important opportunities for innovations and growth, both for the regions and for the universities of applied sciences. Access to international value chains, we think, is a clear success factor already now, today, but even more in the future. And this requires completely new set of skills and ways of working, international know-how of people, lifelong learning, and internationalization of the whole region and organizations in general is highly needed. And universities of applied sciences have also very important role in that, to educate skilled people for today's and tomorrow's labor market. We strongly believe that innovation platforms and ecosystems that connect different industries and stakeholders will play even more a prominent role in the future. Innovation takes place and happens much more in international consortiums, networks, and partnerships too. And what comes to EU funding, it's of course a very important factor in making innovations flourish and grow. And universities of applied sciences and practice-based research, as already mentioned, should benefit much more from EU's research and development funding, Horizon Europe, compared to the previous program periods. That's what we think as a regional authority as well. There should be also much more synergies between Horizon Europe and other EU funding, such as Erasmus+, regional development funds, EU social funds, and so forth. And it was very, very nice to hear from the Commission, from Signe Racho, that the Commission is also taking important steps towards more synergies. And a new ERA Hub initiative that brings regional innovation and European research area closer together is a very, very good and important step to that direction. Not to forget smart specialization, that is an important tool for us to bring regions and universities of applied sciences innovate together. Dear colleagues, I'm summing up. Universities of applied sciences are very much needed to make EU's green growth a reality for us and for the generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christa. Well, that's I think that's probably going to be music to the ears of Marjolein Broussard, President of Artes University in the Netherlands and current President of UAS4EUROPE. Marjolein, your first reflections and thoughts on some of these opening remarks and perspectives?
Well, thank you, Simon. First of all, I'm not the president, I'm the vice president of the University of Applied Sciences for Europe. And I would like to share the greetings of Luciana Vaccaro, who will be the president and will be co-chairing the network for the next year. But thank you for having us. I think we had loads of good intent, positive remarks on the University of Applied Sciences for Europe and all the University of Sciences within it. We're talking about around 600 institutes that host around 2 million students who are able, willing, and can't wait to put all their efforts into helping innovate Europe. Up till now, the University of Applied Sciences had a relatively low profile within the EU. We kind of have been hiding in the shadow of our own achievements, which we need to step up. One of the reasons to build this network is to work together, to work on the synergy between education and research, but also to put practice-based research in its valid place within the innovation spectrum. I think it's important that, as one of the former speakers seemed to still have the understanding that practice-based research and University of Applied Sciences valorize the research of research universities. They do part of that, but they also have their own research, which is differently focused. The UASs have a very strong regional position. They work very closely together since becoming third cycles in different phases in different countries. They're very strongly related to society. They work with society, they work with local governments, and they work with a wide range of industry partners, from very big companies to SMEs. They foster newcomers, they help them engage into innovation, into sharing data, into developing research together, which especially for the SMEs can be a bit hazardous to begin with, as was remarked by one of the former speakers. We have agreed to put the Sustainable Development Goals as our main focus and our main aims in this network, which gives us a strong lead, and we won't do everything together, but we will focus on these because we strongly believe that this generation of students will be the future for a greener, more innovative Europe. And it's not because the students have to do it, but it's heart of heart what they want to achieve. And we can tap into that energy, we can tap into their sense of urgency to do this. While we're here, and while we're hosting this conference, and I'm also very happy to see at least some of you in my screen. It's unfortunate we can't see each other in person, because it's very nice to see this big community that have a warm heart for the UAS. Apart from the network building, which we will do among us and with other governmental structures and research universities, our main focus is to enhance the access to funding in the EU for practice-based research. We need to put ourselves core center and make sure that everybody understands what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what the benefit of it will be. It's to create a platform to promote this research. And lost in my notes here, sorry. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you very much, Marjolein. I think there's also a related question. I mean, it draws on what we discussed before the conference, and there's also a similar question from a member of the audience, which is about drawing on Universities of Applied Sciences' excellence and expertise in the governance of the program, something MEP Niebler spoke about in her remarks earlier this morning. So do you see perhaps more of a role for Universities of Applied Sciences to be better plugged into the assessment and evaluation processes? Would that be something that would amplify some of the work that you're doing?
It would definitely help. We've been lobbying to get practice-based professors into panels, into those who actually assess applications for research funding, which is a slightly different type of professors and sometimes not seen as professors, like science professors. So I think it's important that we get those in. And as I said before, we need to step out of our shadow, but we also need to make sure that within the European Union, with every fund that's available to practice-based research, we are also members of the panel, so we can explain but also share the benefits. Because most of the research that we do in the UAS is easy applicable, immediately innovative, and it enhances the impact of research innovation within the region of Europe, which is what we do. So I think, yes, we need to step up to that. And we have some members of our professorships who are already in this panel. We need to step on that level. And I would also ask the European Union to give at least a small quota, minimum quota, for research funding for University of Applied Sciences. As a woman, I'm not really a fan of quota, but I think without a quota to start with, we will not be able to get into that pool and show what we do. We need this first step, so we need a 5 or 10% funding minimum for the University of Applied Sciences, practice-based research to start with. Then we can show what we do, and then you can lose the quota, and then we can build on that position.
Thank you very much, Marjolein. I think we'll come back to a couple of these points a bit later in the panel discussion. But last but by no means least, Pascal Brunner, Chief Executive at Batarax. Pascal, thank you for your patience. We're in the minority today, which is actually a pleasant reality, but we're delighted to have you with us. And of course, it's vital in these conversations to have an enterprise perspective. And you have a fascinating company which you've been developing in the last few years in Switzerland, also very much in partnership with University of Applied Sciences. So let's take your perspective, your experience of why UASs matter to enterprises like your own, and we'll use that as a bridge into a wider conversation on the panel about innovation ecosystems and support for business. But Pascal, tell us a little bit about Batarax and your story to date.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Simon, for this introduction, and as well, thanks a lot to the other panelists for sharing your thoughts on it. Yeah, as I might be the least known panelist here, I allow myself to introduce myself as well as my company. My name is Pascal Brunner. I'm CEO and co-founder of Batarax. And at Batarax, we believe in a world with bees. And in order to achieve this vision, we use innovative technologies in order to help creating a healthier environment for honeybees. So we enhance honeybee vitality, we simplify the beekeeper's life, and we contribute to a vital pollination all around the world. And in order to achieve that, we have developed a product suite which basically has 3 pillars. The one we are famous for and where our whole startup was founded for is a varroa mite treatment. The varroa mite is a small parasite, basically present in every beehive almost worldwide. And this parasite has mainly been treated chemically against, to keep the parasite levels low. And we have developed a natural solution for this natural problem using a technology which uses like these heating coils embedded into the wax. And therefore, through heating up to a range at 41 degrees centigrade, this kills the mite while the bees survive unharmed. And we have developed this technology, brought it to the market, and now are expanding our value offering for our customers with monitoring tools for health and growth monitoring, as well as management tools. I will explain today a little bit about our journey, which we've had as a company, but then as well as our role, which we play in the ecosystem within governmental funding or institutional funding, but as well with research and innovation cooperations, which we have established regionally, obviously, in order to develop our product suite further. So I think basically the 2 main points which I'd like to talk today is, as I mentioned, our collaboration with ZHW, with Zurich University of Applied Science, where we have a running project currently, which is they develop a computer vision algorithm for us, which we then can implement into our technology suite. And I think this example is a very good example how a collaboration can be really successful, because from our side, we are very happy with this collaboration. And the reason this works well is because the University of Applied Science in Zurich, or in Winterthur in my hometown, they are very, very close to the market. And this is, in my understanding, the huge opportunities UAS have, because being close to the market just accelerates and brings the time to market for companies to a very, very low level, or to a very, very low time. And this really helps speeding up, and this is what you need as a company. Everybody, if you're talking about startup environment, every investor talks about speed, about acceleration. And if we can collaborate with such research universities, then this is an enormous benefit for startups. And I think the second point to mention is that we have a link to the European Commission. Batarax is a beneficiary of the EIC accelerator. So we basically know pretty well both interactions we have, on the one hand to the Universities of Applied Science, but on the other hand as well to the institutional investors or grant enablers. And so I think this is very important, that everybody in the ecosystem needs to know which role to play in that triangle between public funding, between partners who can bring an idea to market, and between the Universities of Applied Sciences, who can be an enabler, who can be an accelerator, and therefore, make the whole ecosystem grow at a much quicker rate. And I think this is in my understanding, the most important point, that everybody knows exactly which role he or she plays in this ecosystem, and as well which role he or she does not play in the ecosystem, and therefore knows where the most value lies on the whole value chain. And I think, I'm really looking forward. I'm hoping I can contribute from my perspective as an industry, as a guy from the industry, and share some interesting thoughts with you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Pascal. And I think we're going to stay with the innovation ecosystem topic for a little while, because it seems to me that it's, again, been part of the broader political narrative for quite some time now. The challenge is always on the implementation. And so I think the first topic for us of broader discussion is what are the concrete steps that can be taken to better connect innovation ecosystems, and as Pascal says, to ensure that they are actually moving closer to market so that new technologies, new solutions, and new skills are streaming into Europe to support its transitions. And everybody can just contribute as they wish. But I think maybe we'll start with Signe on this, because, I mean, under Pillar 3 of Horizon, Signe, there's something called European Innovation Ecosystems. So is this going to be a key part of Horizon in actually driving this agenda forward, as Pascal said, to bring the new technologies closer to market and to better connect these clusters of excellence across Europe?
Well, definitely. I think Pascal is already, or his company is already a clear example of the value of these new instruments that we have as part of the third pillar of Horizon Europe, because we already started to pilot the EIC with its accelerator fund that his company has been able to benefit from last year. And indeed, the Swiss companies have been among those who have been most successful in making use of this new funding. So in the third pillar, there are different components. The EIC fund itself, of course, but then also the EIT, as we asked about the innovation ecosystem. So I think this is also the new component, which we really pin a lot of our hopes on, namely to bring together, better connect the EU ecosystem players, but also the ecosystems themselves, in order to support scaling up of startups and SMEs, namely through dedicated support provided to ecosystem, and to provide this dedicated support at local, regional, as well as national level. And I also picked up the comments that were made by Krista on the need to have also the measures at a local and regional level on the basis of hemorrhage in Finland, which I certainly know as an Estonian. Now, a bit more closely under the European Innovation Ecosystem component, Horizon Europe foresees a budget of 500 million to build an effective and interconnected innovation ecosystem at European level. The actions under this pillar will encourage cooperation, networking, exchange of ideas and knowledge, funding and skills among national, regional, local innovation ecosystem actors. And certainly the learning from the best examples is very much part of that, which I also noted also the proposal along this line. In addition to the policy support, besides funding, there will be also the EIC Forum, the European Innovation Council Forum, which will promote liaison, coordination and dialogue between the relevant public authorities in member states, namely on the development of EU's innovation ecosystem. And certainly then the members of that forum would also learn from each other. So the idea will be to foster exchange of practice, knowledge, but not only on innovation actions, but also on innovation regulation. Because one of the roles we see for the forum is really to see whether there are some regulatory obstacles for the innovators for scaling up their innovations. This will also include open and user-led innovation, which some of the speakers also highlighted as an important factor and a tool.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Signe. So that's a really interesting way to open the conversation. So who else on the panel has some thoughts about whether or not these are really important, adequate steps in the right direction, or has some other concrete ideas about what can be done to strengthen the connectedness between innovation ecosystems and their contribution to the broader EU agenda? Who would like to go first? Perhaps Claudia or Krista?
Right. Thank you, Simon. I would like to share some of my thoughts about the innovation ecosystem pillar in the new Horizon Europe program, and I think that I can represent many cities and regions and local and regional authorities in Europe when I say that it's very much welcome, the new pillar in the Horizon Europe, because how we see the situation, it's very important, as I mentioned in my opening words, that there would be more international collaboration also between innovation ecosystems in Europe. So many local and regional and national innovation ecosystems do very well indeed already now, but what is needed, we think, is more tools to connect to each other on European and later, of course, on global level. And this new instrument, together with other important instruments like Interreg programs, provide tools and financial opportunities to do this kind of international collaboration even more, and that is very much welcomed. And of course, also the concrete practical ways to enable synergies between different EU funding programs are important, and they are one part of this picture. And I was very happy to hear that there is indeed a will to make more connection and opportunities to use EU funding programs and different EU funding in more synergical way, and mirror better the provisions and regulations in these programs. Because indeed, I represent the region. There are plenty of opportunities that we combine the different source of funding. For instance, regional fund or even European Social Fund, by first increasing the capacity of the building in innovation, and then going forward in the innovation processes, and then using different instruments for the same purpose, and even the different instruments at the same time. So we have had some mainly practical challenges to do that before, and we are very much excited to use the synergies much more effective way in the years to come.
Great, thank you, Krista. Now I'm going to invite Claudia to comment on this as well, and then I have a related question for Marjolein and Pascal about knowledge transfer and connectedness between different innovation ecosystems. Claudia, your thoughts on the current plans to take this forward?
Yeah, well, I think we have to acknowledge Europe is in a really tough position when it comes to the competition in terms of innovation. When you look at North America, when you look at what happens in Asia. However, we have to acknowledge there's really only so much that universities can do. And I think for that, they need to have the security and stability of sustainable funding. That is the basis. Then I think they need to have freedom and opportunities to establish an effective technology transfer infrastructure and architecture in their own institutions. However, I think the topic of technology transfer is unfortunately something that we have to talk about a lot more in European institutions. If you compare it to the level of sophistication that is sometimes there, especially if you look at universities in the United States, be it public or private, it's very impressive what they do there. But even for that, if you want to establish this culture of working across different academic fields to really establish this culture of technology transfer, where you have to offer students in different fields the opportunities to work on their entrepreneurial skills, to really try to envision how to bring any innovation to the market. You also then need to have opportunities that come after life in the university, and that is a problem of capital, of venture capital in the European Union. That is just something that we generally lack a little bit. It's not that we don't know that it's necessary, but we're still not at the level, I believe, that is needed to really compete with the other big players in the world. I think we all know what needs to be done. It's just a question of political will. And I know that there are a lot of people in the Commission also fighting for this, but there also needs to be more support from the member states, I think. And then there is the question of how can we really raise the potential of having a common European university and research area that can really and truly make use of the synergies that can exist there. I think in some ways we are still too fragmented and not really thinking big enough as we could. But when it comes to innovation, I think for UASs, they would need to play a huge role in that. And we haven't talked a lot also about the topic of Green Deal innovation and what is needed to create green jobs. And obviously there is a huge potential there, because the differences in applied sciences universities is that they can move quicker. They're a lot more flexible, and that's just what they were meant to do, actually. And I think there has never been a time where we needed them more than now to really bring those people that have the skills to work in these green jobs to the markets very quickly. And they are the institutions where that change can happen. And I think we should make much better use of that.
I think that's an excellent provocative message, and it's actually a topic that I think we'll come back to in a few minutes, because the question of the broader skills agenda, not just in sort of within the context of European policy, but also at a far more localized level, is a critical one. So thank you for raising it, Claudia. We will be reverting to it in just a few minutes. But before we do, I just wanted to turn to Maya-Line and to Pascal, because I think there's also a sense that that when it comes to sort of innovation, knowledge, tech transfer ecosystems, they do still remain rather localized, yet through organizations like European Reference Networks or UAS4EUROPE and others, there's a real push to try and create better knowledge flow between regions, between ecosystems. So I guess my question is whether or not you think this is there enough in place already for systems to be cooperating, for entrepreneurs like Pascal to be drawing on intelligence, knowledge, and success stories from other parts of Europe, or for universities of applied sciences like your own, Maya-Line, to be working dynamically across borders with other partners within other innovation ecosystems. Perhaps Maya-Line, if you'd like to go first, and then we'll come to Pascal.
Thank you, Simon. Well, I'm the president of the University of the Arts, so I'm in art studies, and we work across the globe because arts never keeps to any boundary. Even if you set them, they won't keep to it. So I think the arts are a good example of how to collaborate within your region, within the country, and internationally as well. And there are broad networks of sharing knowledge, research, practice-based, art-based research. That's all in place. But of course, arts is a very limited part of the University of Applied Sciences as a whole. I think if I listen to Claudia in the Netherlands, we have an association that's called the Universities of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands, which is about 15 willing UASs from the 36. And we embody a near 500,000 of students, which is way more and way bigger than the research universities have students. The only difference is that we're fairly new to the third cycle and that we have very limited research funding. What we have been doing over the last 30 years is work very closely in triple helix models. So we work together with companies and with local governments, and we share that knowledge on a national and international level. And that's a system that works very well. And together with the research universities and with economic affairs, we train entrepreneurial students, starters, startups, and scale-ups into building the knowledge, creating the network with them. And we have a very strong network. Within UAS4Europe, I think there's a strong need and sense of urgency to create an even bigger platform to work together at specific theme level or subject level. Of course, there are networks for every subject, for science, for nursing, for pharmaceutical studies. Everything is there, but it's all based on one subject, and we need to broaden up and step over those horizons of those subject areas. And that's exactly where the highest skills that the University of Applied Sciences provide, way more than research universities, is exactly the gap we will try to fill together with the companies. So the relation between companies and the UASs are by tradition way closer than to research universities. So we learn from each other, tap into what they need, tap into their knowledge, and help them expand. And so I think we are in a very good position to start doing this.
Thank you very much, Marjolein. Okay, now, Pascal, I've got a slightly provocative question for you. To what degree would you have benefited from a more internationally connected series of ecosystems? Was your local one enough for you in order to get things going? I mean, at what point do you reach, in your growth curve where you really need access to more international communities and other poles of excellence in terms of technology transfer, in terms of research and development and innovation?
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's a very interesting question, and my answer would anyways have gone exactly in the same direction, because my opinion on tech transfer international communities is slightly different than the ones from the other panelists here, as I think in the early stage of a startup, you shouldn't focus on getting international partnerships and getting technology from abroad. You should focus on what you're doing and only on what you're doing. And therefore, I think for early stage startups, such international networks, they in certain cases they can provide value, but I would say in most cases they don't. However, I'm not talking about tech transfer in general. I think tech transfer from or between universities, or from universities or from traditional universities to universities of applied science, this tech transfer should definitely be featured, as we do a lot of research, reading papers, seeing what's going on, trying to understand the market. But as an early stage startup, you don't have the resources to work on multiple projects. You should work on one project, and I think that's the main differentiation point, on my opinion. However, I think the more a startup grows, the more experience as well the startup becomes. Then I think in a later stage of a startup, or as well on SMEs, international exchange becomes very, very interesting. But at the beginning of startups, like if we're talking from taking students to empower their entrepreneurial spirit from universities of applied science, I don't think internationalization is the right tool for that.
But at some point, if you're successful enough over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Signe, you wanted to comment on this, so please, the floor's yours.
Well, many thanks. Just perhaps a few reactions on the issues that were raised as part of this discussion, namely on this innovation ecosystem. Well, certainly when we designed the new program, Horizon Europe, and particularly the innovation pillar, then we certainly looked around to see what have been the models that have worked internationally. What were still the areas where we were not as successful as our most successful competitors. And certainly what I found out was that there are very successful, so to speak, hubs of innovation. Well, in different parts of Europe, really already the working ecosystems in the Nordic countries, well in the German-speaking countries, as Claudia mentioned. So they all already existed, and some of them were really very vibrant. What we saw was actually lacking, in addition to the funding possibilities, and this is something which the EIC is dealing with, is also clearly how to bring these together at the European international level, how to connect the systems better, and also how to learn from each other, what it really makes to have a favorable environment for the startups. So this was all behind of this part of innovation ecosystems part. And very briefly, I just wanted to highlight, because this was something that Krista mentioned, the ERA hubs, which is now really a new policy initiative, which has been proposed in ERA communication, and its aims really to stimulate place-based innovation, also upskilling, as well as intra-regional and inter-regional connectivity, and also fostering broader transnational cooperation. The concept has been inspired from the EU's digital innovation hubs, and currently we are mapping knowledge ecosystems in order to develop the concept further, but also having consultations on that. So I think that certainly also the universities of applied sciences can have a word on that, namely what will be needed as part of that new concept of hubs.
Thank you very much, Signe. Well, I think that's also a good segue in to come back to the topic of the skills agenda. Obviously, the Green Deal is perhaps the most significant framing part of this, but of course, the digital transition, post-COVID recovery, the future of work, etc. These are all interwoven threads. But perhaps, given the focus of today's panel, we can focus on the Green Deal for a little bit. I mean, it's an enormously complex challenge to anticipate the jobs and skills that will be required in the future. So I'm just going to make this a very open question. How do we do this? And are we already seeing some well-developed thinking about what kind of skills and transferable skills and technical qualifications will be needed for what we anticipate will be the jobs of the future? And I'm going to invite Claudia to go first, and then Maya Line.
I think this is difficult. I've been in the past years on many panels where there's always a question of what can the universities do? We need jobs in this field. We still need to distinguish. This is not a question that you can answer with a kind of planned economy approach. It's not like you can say, I need 1,000 jobs in this field. Please give it to me, this university, and please do so very quickly. I don't think that this is how it works or should work. In preparation for this, I talked also to representatives of the Austrian UASs, and just to see like what are you doing in terms of when it comes to the Green Deal economy. And it's not like they don't follow the news or the market. They have been preparing for this also for a longer term. It's not news to them. They already have a lot of successful programs preparing people for the green economy and for green jobs. That's already there, and it's expanding and it's evolving. And same goes also for traditional universities, even though they have a different infrastructure, and I don't think that they can adapt that quickly to that. But they bring different things to the table, because basic research, also when it comes to solving the climate crisis, is extremely important. And I think we need to tackle this from both sides of the spectrum, when it comes to research and when it comes to the qualified, skilled workers that we need. so sometimes I do think that in universities, it's also a question of how do you bring the people to the jobs and the jobs to the people, or the jobs to the students. But also that is not something I think that a politician should answer. I think the experts on this already work at the UASs, and they know how to do that because it's this is their main field of specialty. They already have a lot of they have a lot of experiences answering that question. And I think what they do very well is working together really closely with companies, especially local employers and companies that offer not only jobs to students that have been to these institutions, but also to offer them research, applied research opportunities to cooperate with the UASs. So we can offer support. I think we can offer know-how exchange. We can offer infrastructure. We can offer capital through different kinds of funds. But when it comes to planning and so on, I think all they need is the freedom to make these decisions, the freedom to plan these programs, the freedom and the capital and the funds and the research support to plan them and execute them. And that will be fine, I think.
Must unmute myself.
Yeah.
Well, you wanted to very quickly comment, and then we're going to come to Maya Line.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I just want to say this is exactly in line with what I see from the industry, and it doesn't always need to be a big project like going over 18, 24 months. It can as well start very small, like it can be a project over a semester, or it can be a bachelor thesis or something. Industry can really benefit from those initiatives.
Thank you for that, Pascal. Now, Maya Line. This question about anticipating the skills of the future. How does your university approach this, or UAS4EUROPE more broadly?
Well, I'd like to thank Claudia for her insight, because education as a whole has the tendency to move at small pace. You establish your goals and you will achieve them in 3-4 years, and society needs a quicker solution. So as Pascal said earlier, I think it's important that we have like a two-speed approach. One is look at the further future, see what do we need, what are the big steps, what's the technology, what is the innovation, what is socially needed, what is needed in sustainable issues, but also to create flexible places within our studies with our students and research. For smaller projects that you can adapt easy on, I want it now, I need it now. That creates better collaboration with companies in the region and nationally, I think. So if you take this two-speed approach, you have to make your education more flexible. So not into fixed curriculum, you have to go to ABC to go into the next year and repeat, because that's prepped. And although it's current and up to date, we, as part of this chain of innovation, needs to create flexibility within our curriculum, within our universities, both on the educational level as on the research level, to take that next step, but also to tune in to how our students at the moment develop. They don't want one size fixed. They want to be able to choose based on their qualities, on their idea of the future, and how to combine different areas of skills and studies together into a future profession they see. And I think the solidity of research, the solidity of a fixed curriculum that builds knowledge, research skills, other skills like technological and digital skills, and the flexibility part is a very good way for the University of Applied Sciences to build towards the future. And the future is approaching rapidly, and we're working within the Netherlands on the economic studies, for example. And it's very hard to step away from paradigms that have been with us for a long time. Like economic paradigms, like creating more value is economic value, and we're focusing more on other areas of value, like societal impact, like sustainable issues, like how to work more on a human level. So I think we're working with the changing world and try to become part of that change rather than just provide what is needed. Because if Pascal said, I need this skill, it will take 3 to 6 months, maybe a year, before we can actually provide a curriculum to do it. So by collaborating very closely, we know earlier and we can forethink together with Pascal and other companies and SMEs, okay, we think you need this in the next 6 to 10 months. So let's go and start build that now.
Super, thank you, Marjolein. So, I mean, if we can, let's stick with sort of transformation and role of business in this. Sorry, Signe, did you want to quickly make a comment?
Yes, very quickly, just to mention what is being done at the European level, because, well, clearly we recognize the need of developing the skills, well, particularly under the need of this green and digital transformation. And that's why the new skills agenda was adopted last summer. And I'd like to highlight two areas which are under development. One is clearly one of the more longer term perspective, and the other one is perhaps also with some shorter term perspective. The longer term perspective is taxonomy of researcher skills, which will be incorporated into the European classification of skills, competencies, and occupations. Certainly, this would be something which will be then the basis in the future. But at the same time, also developing European competence framework for researchers. This will allow researchers to know first what competencies they need to self-assess and to receive targeted training. And it will also enable for the facilitate job search intersectoral mobility, clearly then to find the places where their skills will be needed.
Thank you, Signe. That's a very important reminder, but I guess also based on today's conversations, there's clearly a need to involve universities of applied sciences in articulating what those competencies will be, and not just perhaps the more conventional universities. So if I can, I'd like to come back to the sort of the transformative dimensions and actually draw on a question from a member of the audience who is basically asking what kind of success stories or what kind of successful models could be used to encourage SMEs in particular to contribute to, for example, public-private partnerships. And then, of course, by extension, one of the great transformative ideas of Horizon Europe are the moonshot missions. And of course, it also goes without saying that the updated industrial strategy, which came out only a few days ago, puts SMEs at the heart of competitiveness and transformation as well. So I'd like to turn to Christa and to Pascal first to answer this. What you think are the most effective ways to bring SMEs in particular on these journeys of research, technology, and innovation to tackle complex global challenges?
Thank you very much, Simon. As we have discussed, the University of Applied Sciences master very, very, very much, especially on the practice-based science, and they are very often very strongly embedded in the local collaboration structure, or we can call it innovation ecosystem or collaboration platforms that include also SMEs, and that is a very important possibility, I think, to engage SMEs via universities of applied sciences, not only to innovation processes, but also enable them to take part to European level collaboration. As we all know, there are much more SMEs, why not also startups, needed to collaborate on Horizon programs. So that's a joint challenge, common challenge we have. And I think that because Universities of Applied Sciences have so close contact very often to SMEs, that opens the opportunity for SMEs or to engage them and guide them to innovation collaboration on local, regional, national, and international level as well.
Super, thank you, Christa. Now, Pascal, I keep being provocative with you, so my apologies. But you mentioned earlier that when you're a high growth startup, you need to focus. Yet there are these hugely ambitious, very exciting proposals at European level, which kind of require the breakthrough solutions that companies like yours are working on. So can you combine the two? Do you have the bandwidth to get involved?
Well, I mean, it's a difficult question to answer. I think there are cases where this can absolutely happen. However, I think it's very important to understand which role you play in such project. If sometimes it happens that you find a project where you really fit in very well as a company, and then you don't have to kind of diversify your offering or your development. And in such case, it can work pretty well. But in my understanding of a successful startup, it should always be the startup saying, or the startup should be navigating where it wants to go. And then if there is a need with a multinational instrument, then it can be a very good fit. But we did that in the early stage sometimes when we saw, there is a funding opportunity, and we diversified a little bit. My experience is it's as soon as you're not going your path, it's not really bringing value to the table. So rather say no to an opportunity which doesn't really fit, but say yes to those which really fit, and find those, and maybe be a bit more diligent on finding those.
Very good. Thank you, Pascal. Now, Marjolein, let me just quickly turn to you. I mean, regarding these sort of the partnerships and the missions under Pillar 2 in particular, do you see a very distinct role for universities of applied sciences as these roll out a little later this year?
Yes, but can I get back to Pascal's comment first, please?
Of course.
Sorry to interrupt your schedule, but because I think it's a fair point. I think we need loads of starters and startups to focus and develop their own strengths and their own thing before collaborating. And I think what we can do at a local and regional level is to support starters, ideas, startups to get to knowledge quicker. Because as a starter or a startup, you don't have the time or the headspace to start on application of whichever kind. The necessity, yes, but the other things probably not. So at my university, we work with an art business center that focuses on helping young entrepreneurs within the region to get to funding, to get to knowledge, to get to proper education, to work together as well. Because this generation of entrepreneurs works very closely together with other young entrepreneurs. And they support each other in this we are able to fail phase, because not every entrepreneur is successful in one go. It usually takes 2 or 3. And we need time with starters and startups to allow them to fail. They need to learn from that. It's the process you have to engage in. And I think that's what we can bring to the universities as well. It's not everything is built to one straight line into success. You need collaboration and failure to get to a proper result.
I'm drawing on a question from the floor, or the virtual floor, I should say. Would it be advisable for universities of applied sciences to build more strategic relations with tech transfer organizations or research transfer organizations as a means of providing additional safety nets or additional resources, and this question of scale?
Yes, I can only talk for the Dutch universities. We work together with the research universities on tech collaboration in every field. So in safety, cyberspace security, developing data analysis systems. So within the country, we do this. We haven't discussed this as a European level yet, because we have smaller partners with UAS4EUROPE and bigger ones. But yes, definitely, I think it's good to work together and to combine the strengths, especially in this case between research university and UASs, because it's part of the same whole. So if you have the technical and scientific side on one hand, and the more practice-based impact skills on the other hand, if they collaborate within technical transfer, then you get a strength. And if you then add collaboration with entrepreneurs and industry, then you have a strong pact. And then you can tap into what a society and government needs and want to develop.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, well, we have time for one more question for all of you. So I'd like you to take your time and just sort of reflect a little bit on the future. I mean, one of the key considerations that universities of applied sciences will have to assess as well is what defines success in the next 5-10 years during Horizon Europe. What would be an ideal outcome for Europe, for Europe's research and innovation programs, and for society at large? So I'm going to turn to Signe first, actually. I mean, the DG Research is responsible for assessing the impact of Horizon. So what do you think, what would be the ideal situation for you in terms of how UAS contributing to delivering on the long-term goals of Horizon in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, first of all, really, Horizon Europe program very much focuses on the impact. On the impact, not only research impacts, but also impact on economy and on society. As we've learned and know, UAS are very closely connected with the business sector. So clearly they could very much contribute to bring together the research, the applied sciences, and the companies, namely having more economic impact, but also impact on societies. And as you mentioned, the so-called moonshot missions, the missions that we have in the new program, which will be a great opportunity for the UAS, because you are operating at the intersection of science and society, and you can really join forces with research organizations, other universities, and companies. And what is also new there, as we'd like to have more impact on society, we are also involving citizens in order to create broad support and also narrow their perceived distance to the EU. And the missions really are there to provide answers to today's most pressing societal challenges, and find then answers to complex challenges, and provide concrete, transformational, and systemic responses. And on all of that, certain UAS will have a key role to play. Also, you mentioned partnerships. We will also have a new landscape of partnerships, a more simplified approach, where certainly also there will be more opportunities for the newcomers, for the companies, SMEs, and as you are very close to the market, certainly, particularly when it comes to the partnerships which bring together the private and the public sector, you will also have a key role to play.
Thank you for the encouraging words, Signe, much appreciated. Okay, let's ask Claudia now for your short thoughts on the future, success and impact. Where could we be in 5-10 years, and what benefits will that have delivered between society and universities of applied sciences?
I think in general, if we see that the UAS sector continues to grow, continues to have a larger number of students there, and also is able to continue grow its research activities, that would be a clear indicator of success, I believe. And we will see a number of success stories also of very concrete examples of innovation, successful company founders that have started their career with a USA project, and that will be key success indicators, I believe. And also I support what has been said before. Obviously, the level of cooperation between different institutions is always something that is a really clear sign that the network effects are really happening in the European university sector, which is something that I really believe in, that we need to strengthen in order to strengthen the university sector as a whole. And as sometimes when it comes to education, there are also things that you cannot measure that show its success. And I think we will also be looking out for that.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Claudia. Pascal, let's come to you next, then to Krista, and we'll give the closing word to Maya Line on behalf of UAS for Europe. But Pascal, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, or as well, what makes me proud as a CEO of a young startup is that we were already able to bring EU-funded research collaboration with universities of applied science, developed in Switzerland, and bring it out to Europe again, export our products, and therefore as well help our customers all over Europe. And I think this is exactly success stories which need to be featured and which need to be shown as well to stakeholders of all levels, because I think this is encouraging, and this is what drives innovation in the end. And yeah, I'm really happy we at Batarax could contribute to some part already, and I'm really looking forward to create even a bigger impact.
Excellent. So the dream is more Bataraxes, in brief.
Absolutely.
As exemplars of this public-private innovation value chain model that we're so desperate to see scaled and adopted all over Europe. Now, Krista, your closing thought.
Thank you, Simon. I pretend to look back now 5 years forward. The last 5 years, from the regional point of view, our collaboration with the University of Applied Sciences, or University of Applied Science in Häme, that is the closest partner for us, of course. I would like to see that we would have been able to direct the change together, not only adapt to change, that as partners we would have been able to create the change and future together, stressing the word together. So I believe that behind the success factor, behind the successes today and in the future, is collaborating together, bringing the right people with the right complementary skills together, working for may it be for the innovation projects or some other kind of thing, working together, co-creation in the spirit of engagement, participation and trust. These are the keys for success. That's how I think.
Thank you very much for that, Krista. Now, Maya Line, the final word to you on behalf of UAS for Europe. Where would you like to be, and what would you like to have achieved in 5 to 10 years?
Well, I like the idea of a success story. If we look back 5 to 10 years from now, I think the chain of innovation has been strengthened and has been developed more into mutual collaboration, mutual respect, and adding different parts we need to make a significant impact in society. And I think we should do that together, both at the regional level as well as the national and international level. So I think it's important to strengthen that the UAS by nature is very capable of providing their strong part within this chain. And I believe very strongly what Krista also emphasizes, that it needs to be done by collaboration. We can only do it together. And I think that's a message that got the partners of UAS together in the first place. Is yes, we are strong. Yes, we have to put ourselves more into the highlights, that everybody can see what we do. We have to celebrate our success, make it more known, and we have a way to go there. But I think if we look back in 10 years' time, that the University of Applied Science and Research, our students, our alumni, and our researchers have a significant role and played a significant role in societal changes and development, not only based on the necessity as being informed by government or by companies, but also the innovation power of students and research on its own. They will come with new ideas. They also will come with new values that we need to create a stronger Europe that is more inclusive, that builds on the strengths of diversity, both in the humanistic sense of the word, but also within the science and research sense of the word. So I'm not sure it's up to me, but I really like to thank my panelists who were informing us and sharing this with you. I'm sure you're going to do this, but I want to express my personal thanks to the co-panelists here. Thank you.
And thank you, Marlijn. I will be very pleased to do so in one moment. So we're now regrettably bringing the panel session to a close. It really has been a fascinating 90 minutes. It's always a concern that when you have these extended sessions that it may feel as though it drags a little, but it certainly hasn't on this occasion. Now, two very practical things before we close for our audience at home. The first is that shortly before the lunch break starts, I just need to remind you that you should continue to follow the live stream so that you can log back on at 1:25 for the expert workshops. You'll get a reminder about 30 minutes before they go live so you don't overrun. And by extension, you can also access the sessions live about 5 minutes before they actually begin. So just follow the instructions that you get via email and enjoy the rest of your afternoon discussions. So on that, I would like to thank, first of all, the audience for following us this morning, for all of your great questions, comments, and inputs, and also for your contributions to the Slido word cloud. I think basically innovation was the big winner, perhaps unsurprisingly, applied research number 2, and I'm sure that the UAS4Europe team will share the results with you a little later today. But above all, thank you very much to our panelists, to Pascal Brunner, to Claudia Gamon, Marlijn Broussard, Signe Razzo, and Christa Taipale for all of your insights and the amount of time you've spent with us today to support this conference. We wish you much success in the weeks and months to come, but thank you very much for agreeing to be with us. And so we now bring the session to a close, and we look forward to seeing you again a bit later today. Thank you, and goodbye for now.
We are a common voice for universities of applied sciences in Europe. We are a European networking platform in the field of applied research and innovation. We are showing Europe our sustainable impact. We are UAS4Europe. Today, we face growing global challenges on issues of health, climate change, and food security. UAS tackled these and more global challenges on a local level by teaming up with different types of partners and acting as regional connectors. How we do it? Through our extensive UAS network that reaches across the European continent. Through more than 600 institutions, over 60,000 excellent researchers, and over 2 million motivated students. With partners spanning from startups to regional authorities, from SMEs to multinationals, and research and technology organizations. We design and implement our projects together. Our universities of applied sciences are important changemakers in their regions and cities. Join our UAS movement in Europe. Check out our website and become a partner. UAS4Europe. Let's tackle global challenges together.